Hello and welcome to Playing Talk here on Eagle Eye TV. I'm your host Ken Ward, and today we're joined by a special guest, former Miss America and current congressional candidate for the Democratic nominee for District 3's congressional seat here in Alabama, Miss Mallory Hagan. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Mallory, I know you are new to politics and this is your first really ever political run. Can you tell us just a little bit about why you decided to run for this seat? Congress is a pretty big first start. Could you just tell us a little bit what drove you to this race?
Sure. Well, for starters, I was asked to consider running, and my initial response was absolutely not. That's crazy. But the more I started looking at where our political climate is right now and how many people truly represent me in Congress, I started to reconsider that concept, and then I did a little bit of research and started talking with some people here in the Lee County Democratic Party. And we had a couple of meetings, and I started to really consider what this would look like for me and for my family, and how this could potentially change my career path. And it's something that I had always considered in the future. I always thought that I would run for office later down the road in life. And you know, I started looking at where we are today in our country, and I feel like we're at a bit of a turning point, and I wanted to be a part of that conversation in this turning point in history. So I decided to throw my hat in the ring, and you know, lo and behold, there are almost 400 other women across the country who are in this same position in their states who are doing the same thing, which is great.
You spoke out a lot in recent weeks about the Miss America organization, especially in the wake of the whole Me Too movement. Can you describe a little bit about your experience and some of the stuff you've been talking about on the media about that?
Sure. So for the last 4.5–5 years, I've experienced what I would call systematic harassment through the Miss America organization. And what we saw in the media through the emails that were released was just a small taste of sort of how I was being treated by this massive nonprofit organization, ostracization, them trying to destroy my business. And it was a very small group of people who were really influencing quite a few people through the organization. And so ultimately that sort of came to light through the Huffington Post. There was a really awesome article written by Yashar Ali, and he did an investigative piece on it, and it blew up. And I think that the benefit of that is finally I'm sort of free of this feeling of I'm being harassed and not having any proof, not being able to do anything about it, but also that it gave people a chance to yet again see that I am someone who is capable of using my voice and for being a strong mouthpiece for harassment, or if in the past it's been child advocacy. And so I wouldn't say that I'm glad that it happened, because it certainly was a very difficult 4.5 years of my life, but I do think it has prepared me for this next chapter, and I think it prepared me in a really big way for it.
What are some of the key political issues that you plan on making a part of this campaign in the coming weeks?
Well, I think that a lot of people question why I moved. Why did you leave Alabama at 19 and go away? And I think that a lot of it is that there is a bit of a lacking in opportunity here, especially in our district. We have some really great colleges and universities. I mean, between Auburn, we have Tuskegee, Southern Union, we've got Talladega College, all the way up to Jacksonville State. All of those schools are in our district, and yet we see people graduate and then move away. And so one of the things I really want to focus on is our workforce development and job creation. And the way that we do that is by bringing industry here, but also making sure that we have skilled workers to fulfill those jobs when they come. And one of the things that I did do over the course of the time that I wasn't here in Alabama was I made some pretty awesome connections between New York City and Los Angeles. And what we're seeing is that the entertainment industry wants to be moving here for the tax breaks and for the cost of living. And we really just want to be able to marry all those things together. So job force and workforce development is something that I think is really important, married with our type of education, making sure we have skilled and trained workers in order to fulfill those jobs. And then, of course, our healthcare system. I think that across party lines, that's what everyone here is concerned about. They're concerned about having a quality education for their kids, of course, and they're concerned about affordable and accessible healthcare. And so one of the things we're seeing is our rural hospitals are closing, but we have quite a bit of talent here in Alabama between UAB and the Children's Hospital. We've got a lot of talent here in our state, and we want to make sure that people have access to that health care in a way that's affordable. So those are my two main focuses, and of course I have plenty that I care about, but that's what we'll be focusing on.
You spoke about healthcare, and in the past few months, we've seen a big focus on the Affordable Care Act, whether it be the repeal efforts or most recently with the tax reform legislation removing the individual mandate requirements. And then the past week, we've seen several states' attorney generals announce that they're going to try to get some lawsuits to finally, in their opinion, kind of destroy the whole bill in regards to how the Supreme Court decided back in 2012. Can you describe a little bit about your opinion specifically on the Affordable Care Act?
Well, my opinion is that there are still quite a few people in this district without health care, despite having the Affordable Care Act as an option. And so we want to continue to move forward in a way that makes as many people insured as possible. And so I am a proponent of the Affordable Care Act. I do think that there are some things that we could change, but there's more good there than bad. And I think that we need to figure out how we can move forward in a direction where as many Alabamians as possible are covered, because otherwise we're going to absorb that cost as individuals. And the other thing that I think that we need to really be focused on as a country is how do we separate our job from our health care? That's something that happened as an accident many moons ago, and we want to make sure that we're removing those two things, because right now, for instance, I quit my job in order to run for Congress, and therefore I quit my health care. And so now I have to make a decision about what type of health care I would like to have, and ultimately looking at what that's going to cost me as someone who is technically unemployed. And so I really would like to see us unmarry those two things moving forward, because I think that's going to be something that's beneficial to more people.
In addition to healthcare, in the national debate, we've really seen a lot about tax cuts and tax reform. Recent polls have shown the new tax reform efforts that no Democrat members of the House or Senate voted for have gotten a majority of the American public approve of that. Is tax reform something that you support, especially the most recent legislation?
I think that tax reform is something that every person should support in one way or another, because we need to make sure that we are treating our citizens fairly based on the amount of income that they have. And I don't think that our last tax reform is going to benefit as many people as we were led to believe. But that is something that I'm still investigating and learning about. And specifically up and down our district, one of the things I'm doing is listening sessions. And so I've had a listening session on racism and diversity. I've had one on healthcare. I've had one on gun reform. And so, of course, our tax breaks and our tax reform will be something that'll be on that list of things too. It's pretty early on.
You just mentioned gun reform. We've really, after the wake of the Florida shooting, have really seen a lot of discussion about that, both on the pro-Second Amendment side and then on the side of wanting more restrictions on gun ownership. Can you describe, Alabama's a very big state where people really appreciate their gun rights. We most recently had State Representative Elaine Beach, who's a member of the Democrat Party, who's also said she's a member of the NRA and says she carries her pistol around sometimes. Could you describe just your opinion on the Second Amendment and how you would articulate that if elected to Congress?
Sure. Well, I'm a proponent of the Second Amendment. I believe that everyone deserves the freedom and the right to carry a firearm if that's something that they want to do. And in fact, there are guns in my house. I do not carry a gun, but my dad certainly has been a hunter and carried one for the entirety of his life. And the way that I feel about this is that we need to prevent violence. So it's gun violence prevention. And right now we're acting in crisis mode as a country in many ways. But I think that what we need to be looking at is a way to make sure that people have a universal background check. I think that's 97% of Americans agree with that topic, one that's federal and across the board. And then a universal waiting period, one that is federal and across the board. With that, I would love to see some better restrictions on internet purchases and sales. And of course, with a universal background check and a universal waiting period, that would close our gun show loophole. So I think that those things are just helping us prevent violence. In addition to that, we can also focus on mental health and the reasons why we have young people who feel the need to walk into their school and cause harm, and why we have young people on the streets who are causing harm with guns as well. Those things don't have to be separate, and it doesn't have to be one or the other. I think that all of us as Americans have been led to believe through our administration that we have to focus on one thing or the other thing. And I'm really a proponent of we're all capable of thinking about two things at once, and we can focus on both mental health and preventing guns from being in the wrong hands.
In recent days, some people, especially on the Democratic side, have called for an assault weapons ban. Do you have an opinion on that issue?
Personally, I don't see any reason for an individual to own an assault weapon, but I do understand that people enjoy assault weapons or high-powered weapons for game or for sport, and I think that if you intend on using those weapons the way that they're meant to be used, which is for sport or for fun in some capacity, then improving our background check system and a longer waiting period shouldn't infringe on your right to own those things.
You also discussed mental health. What are some specific policy proposals that you would want to see enacted by the Congress in regards to mental health issues?
Well, it's like I said, it's still a little bit early, but one of the things that I do think that is going to be very important is the expansion of Medicaid for that reason. I mean, that is a huge part of our mental health protection here in America, and even more so, it doesn't really do enough. As someone who suffered from depression and anxiety, and it's hereditary on both sides of my family, it's something that I think is really important, and we need to be hyper-focused on in order for our young people to be able to move forward and be productive members of society.
Well, we'll be right back here with Plain Talk on Eagle Eye TV. We got to take a short break. We're here talking with congressional candidate Mallory Hagan. Thank you so much, and join us in just a second. Welcome back to Plain Talk here on Eagle Eye TV. I'm your host, Ken Ward, and this week we're joined by former Miss America and current congressional candidate, Miss Mallory Hagan. Thank you so much, Mallory, for joining us.
Again, thanks for having me.
Mallory, we were talking a little bit earlier about some specifics about different current topics of interest on the congressional side. I also want to bring up something else that has been up for debate recently. Many people have been in the Congress really debating over whether, especially on the Democratic Party, have been talking about possibly wanting to impeach Donald Trump. Is there any? Is that something that you would be supportive of? Is that something that you would want to tell your Democratic colleagues to kind of shy away from?
To be really honest, I'm not there, and I'm not seeing the things that our current leaders and representatives are seeing, and so I can't make a judgment call on that. And that's something that, should I become elected and find myself in office, then I definitely will evaluate then. Because
I know we've seen some people like Maxine Waters on the left and have repeatedly called for that, and I know Al Green said it tried to implement that on the floor, but some more moderates in the party, such as Nancy Pelosi, have kind of tried to shy away from that. I just wanted to see if that's something, which side of the party you would try to lean towards more.
Well, I think that the thing that's most important in being a representative is being a person who speaks for your district. And what we've seen in party politics is people who align more with a party than they do with the people that they're supposed to represent. And so that's what I'm really trying to get away from. The reason that I decided to run is that I don't feel that our current representative actually listens to his district and is available and accessible to the people who have real issues and they want to discuss those with him. And so, as far as aligning with a party in a certain manner, whether it's impeachment or any other topic, that's just not what I'm looking to do as a representative. What I would be looking to do is to listen to the people of my district and do what they think is best.
You mentioned the current Representative Mike Rogers. District 3 in the past has had traditionally a lot of kind of well-known politicians. Mike Rogers currently, who's served for roughly 16 years, and then also before him, former Alabama Governor Bob Riley. I'm confused. Bobby Wright's running for District 2. Yeah. What differentiates yourself, in your opinion, from Representative Rogers right now, and what would you do to try to kind of differentiate yourself if elected to Congress?
Well, I think the first thing is that I have consistently said since I announced that this is about listening to people and about being a representative of them. And the thing I'm least impressed with Mr. Rogers, Congressman Rogers, is that he has decided that no matter what, he will vote alongside President Trump. And to me, that is the epitome of party politics, and that's the epitome of a career politician. And that's what we need to be moving away from. I mean, I think that we've seen time and time again that this isn't serving us, this divisive rhetoric and this divisive nature between our parties. And so that would be the first thing that I think would differentiate me. And the second thing is that I don't have a voting history to use against me. And I'm happy about that. You know, I have proven to be a voice in the community. I've proven to stand up for what's right over and over again. And I think that that's something that, despite your party, you can see the benefit of, is that somebody who stands up for what they believe in and what they think is right. And so I would say that those two things are things that differentiate me from Congressman Rogers right now. And I'm sure that as this develops further, moving into the primary in June and then the election in November, we'll see some other things start to shine as well.
You specifically mentioned President Trump. President Trump won by a pretty large margin in our state, and many point to his victory as being because of the, quote, white working class voters. Many communities in District 3 are kind of aligned with some of those ideals. You see places like Anniston and places like Gadsden where a lot of the working class jobs have been decimated over the past few years, and those are kind of the voters that many pundits say brought President Trump to victory. Could you describe a little bit about how you would try to win those people over, and if opposed to President Trump, how you'd be able to try to connect with those voters?
Well, I think the thing that I'm already seeing is a lot of people who are willing to cross over and have a conversation with me. And I think it's because I'm not a career politician. And, you know, as I just mentioned, I have been a proponent of doing what's right for a long time, long before I decided to jump into this race and run for Congress. So I've already been to Anniston, I've been to Jacksonville State, I've been to Calhoun County, their Democrat meeting. I've been all up and down the district already in the past 3 weeks, and it's only been that long since I decided to announce that I was going to run. And so what I'm seeing is that people, they are desperate for someone to listen, and they are willing to cross that party line in order to achieve that. And so I've already seen people coming out of the woodworks and saying, listen, I'm a Republican, but we need change. We need something else. And so I think that that's going to be really telling over the next couple of months of people who they kind of are to this point where they don't care what party you're in. They just want someone to do their job. And a lot of times I think that's what people are forgetting, is that these representatives are there for us and they work for us. And if they're not doing that, then they deserve to not have that job anymore.
In addition to that, after the 2016 elections, many political analysts said that a lot of times mentioned that the Democratic Party had aligned itself too much with their voters on their base on the coast and in some of the big cities, and had what they called neglected what they called rural America and middle America. In what ways would you try to, as a Democrat, try to connect with those rural voters and some of the voters in Alabama that might right now not identify as much with the National Democratic Party?
Well, listen, I think that for the most part, all Americans want the same thing, right? They want to have, as I mentioned earlier, they want quality education for their kids. They want affordable health care that's also accessible. They want jobs when they graduate from college, and a variety of other things, but they want to live in a place that is inclusive, that they feel that they're safe. So, I mean, we have so much more in common, despite what city we live in, than people actually realize. And one of the benefits, I think, to my having been Miss America and also traveled the world is that I've seen people in rural Alaska are very similar to people in rural Alabama. And people in outskirts of the big cities in California are very similar to the people in the outskirts of the cities in Iowa. And I think that that's something that a lot of people sort of forget, is that we're all much more similar than we think we are. We all bleed the same color. We all have the same wishes for our family and for our kids. And I think that there's a great benefit to having grown up here in Alabama and understood the way of life here and how people operate and a little bit of how they think, and then also moved off to big cities like New York and Los Angeles. I think that there's a lot I can bring from those places back here, but also there's just, it's an understanding of both worlds and being able to cross the line in that way.
In recent months, the immigration reform debate has really heated up. It really got started back in 2016 during the election, but it's really heated up now that the DACA deadline is quickly approaching. Many in Congress have really been debating on what is the best solution for that issue, and whether it be funding the border wall or things of that, or providing amnesty to a large number of the illegal immigrants still in our country. What's your opinion on how to best deal with illegal immigration?
Well, I don't know that I have, a solution right now, and I think that if anybody had a solution, we'd be a lot further along in this debate than we are. I do think that building a border wall is not going to protect our country from illegal immigrants. That's something that I just don't believe is a good use of our country's money and our energy. And I do think that we have to find a way to, especially our DREAMers and our DACA recipients, allow them to stay and flourish here. They're members of our society who have largely been here for quite some time. They are contributing, they are learning, and they're woven into the fabric of our country. And so I do hope that over the next couple of months we can come to a solution that allows them to thrive here, because I do think that it's going to be very important for them to do so.
And then my final question is, many people have criticized the leader of the House in your party, Nancy Pelosi. Would you vote for Nancy Pelosi for Speaker if elected?
I think that that's something that I'm still considering, to be quite honest. And what I said earlier was that party politics isn't working for us, and aligning yourself strictly with a party line is not necessarily the way that we need to move forward, which is why I think we're seeing so many people who are not career politicians jumping into the race, because we desire to see change. So I'm not quite there yet, to be quite honest, but I do think that it's going to be very important for me to remain focused on what's going to be best for the people of Alabama and what I think is going to be best for Americans in general. And you know, if that is to vote for Nancy Pelosi when the time comes, then I'll do that. But I'm not quite there yet.
Well, thank you so much, Mallory, for joining us, and thank you for joining us on this special edition of Plain Talk here on Eagle Eye TV. Be sure to join us each week for a great in-depth conversation with one of the key movers and shakers of our community. Thank you so much, and have a great week.